Welcome, my child, to the Twilight Mysteries. I am your humble presenter, here to curate a few horrific stories. Allow me to take your hand and lead you on a journey to the depths of a South African game reserve. Turn off your lights, listen closely, and enjoy as I recount the submission by James McCormack, an alleged account of his run-in with the supernatural while on holiday in the early 2000s. We arrived on the Monday. The scalding African sun was setting behind us as we approached the cabin after the first day out on safari. The game ranger had dropped us off just outside of the electric fence's border. Even though that seemed unusual, we were thankful for the ride to the cabin and didn't think much of it. The cabin was in shambles. It looked as though no one had come around to clean it in years. The beds, although made, were covered in dust. The walls were chipped and cracked in places. Regardless, we weren't planning on spending much time in the cabin itself anyway, and it wasn't all that bad, especially for the price. In hindsight, I suppose, our first warning sign should have been the fact that the locals wouldn't look at or speak to us after we told them where we were staying. It began to weird us out, especially when the locals had been so welcoming before. The first night passed without issue. When we awoke, the cups and bottles we had mistakenly left out were shattered all over the veranda floor. We assumed at the time that a roaming troop of vervets or baboons had swiped and smashed them while we slept. So we weren't too worried. The rampant monkeys were a problem, and we were instructed not to feed them for that exact reason. We simply concluded that we would have to report the missing glasses to the main lodge and get replacements. Probably pay for damages, but nothing more than that. They gave us replacements, but the staff informed us that we would have to take them to the room ourselves. At first, that seemed odd, maybe a little rude. But knowing what I now know, I believe that superstition, terror, or an instinct for survival motivated them above all else. That night was the worst for sleep. We could hear something outside, pacing around the house, grunting and snarls filled the silent night air. The sound was so horrible that I felt paralyzed by fear. Lying awake in bed, staring at the wooden rafters, I craned my neck to look out the window. Now and then, when the terrible grunts got louder, and whatever outside got closer to my window, I saw the beast's hulking, humanoid form silhouetted against the silver moonlight. Michelle, fiancée at the time, and by far the bravest out of the lot of us, went to see what it was. She took her cigarette lighter and left the room we were staying in. The cabin door creaked open, and I heard it swing shut again. The creature outside stopped making sound for just a second. Suddenly, it let out a blood-curdling howl, and with heavy footsteps, bounded toward the front of the cabin. We heard Michelle's terrified scream, which was cut short by the sound of a heavy impact. Needless to say, we didn't sleep that night. Michelle never returned to our room, and the creature kept its sick patrol. Out the window, we would catch glances of the creature's glowing eyes. If I had to describe them, I'd say that hellfire doesn't glow as sinisterly as those two orbs of dark crimson floating in the vaguely humanoid silhouette. I still see the creature in my nightmares all these years later, those glowing eyes burning into my soul. The next morning came, and just before sunrise, we heard the beast leave. We went to search outside for Michelle. The area surrounding the cabin was covered in deep, heavy-set footprints. Although they appeared human, we all knew that was not possible. Michelle was missing. On the veranda we saw the giant bloodstain from where the beast had tackled her. The dark crimson had splattered over the deck and had since dried. A little way off, Ronnie Johnson, my best friend, found Michelle's engagement ring in a bit of upturned shrubbery. We called the police, and although very reluctantly, they did come out. They stayed at the fence, and we spoke to them from there. A young constable was brave enough to venture onto the property. He observed the crime scene and found 2 more large pools of blood that we had not noticed. He radioed to his colleagues in what I had come to recognize as Zulu. They radioed back and forth a bit before he turned to us. He informed us that Michelle was most likely dead. The constable also told us that they would mark this area as a crime scene and that we should wait at the lodge until further notice. We agreed and gratefully accepted a police escort to the lodge. They gave us an empty room, and I used the phone to call Michelle's parents and inform them of what had happened. About 2 hours, a few stiff whiskeys, and one very emotional phone call later, 2 large African men walked into the room. Their uniforms bore a logo and the name of their company, the Theseus Institute. They called us to identify Michelle's body, which was not very easy. Her face and body were mangled beyond anything I had nor ever have seen again. The only thing we could use to place a name to that pile of gore and bones was Michelle's butterfly tattoo, which remained intact. It bore her name and the names of her parents worked into the design of the wings. I choked back a scream as he unveiled her body. One of the men from the Theseus Institute stepped forward and grabbed my arm in a comforting way. He thanked us for our time. He told us that they had been on this creature's tail for the past 2 years. The 2 men nodded, moved past us, exiting the room together. On their way out, I heard them talking to a police officer and game ranger. The official death report claimed that her death was the result of a feral leopard attack. Based on what I had personally seen, the footprints, the silhouette, I just can't accept that. The creature I saw was definitely not a leopard. And there's no way in hell an animal can do that much damage. One question stuck with me all these years. What was that creature that killed Michelle? That is something I will probably never uncover. Mysterious, right? What is it that stalks the night and preys on the defenseless like James? We will probably never know. So keep your doors locked. And if anything goes bump in the night, I'd recommend staying in bed. That's all for tonight, children. Sweet dreams.